It's currently no helicopter na crash ma omane bo ama eni Murtala Mohammed ewe the 8 fallen heroes ewe ya no. Also na Ghana for aye cool train report from the black box. Noise ben the team record there and say info bay and a black box na carry na e dey be kwa na call say helicopter na man na crash ye no. Elza finally report na ababontene. Report na ababontene na me wum de say buburuja. Be man kire bu no akire wadwen ama me. E wo comment section. Aha Penyah Block Media. Me so say ni di mu. Obe like video no other but subscribe button somebody click the notification icon for latest updates somebody kire wadwen de mama e wo comment section. Best also baso no share for onya bi ahwe. It's back exactly 8th August 2025. Ghana yanti asem de. Ne nyina nse Murtala Mohammed ene omane bu amamo ene 6 other people. Omo ekọ oboase cheze anti-galamsey initiative program na ka omo kwa launch wo honomo. Eno anafofi anto ya se omo plane no helicopter na ekọ crash wo wiem a ese ebebo form no nipa 8 na omo ni de ebuso omo nyina kra na obia ankan wish fofi anto ata omo nyina eto ana mo se do that particular day ama eno no dada no abia Ghana yeda yentam kese I say okay na oman nyina yaboto because that was the day you lose 2 cabinet ministers. What I say 2 cabinet ministers and a sitting MP. That day is abia Ghana no yentam kese a oboso na president na waboto wakai na ya okese wakai na real hopa. Now that incident happen no na Ghana for ni be especially yenyom NDC for no omo adwin bi say oh and yes other kwan MP before the course say kwana so mu ens mu kan no as o be so mu create some impression be say MP for wicked people na omo na akoso that omo na akoti pray no e o be nya adwin bi say helicopter no kwan dey say obi ene 2 bibi ebomu enti ene black box na because plane bia na you free be friend the black box it is not necessarily black but you two dini the black box there no c'est plane e be she said the crown black box in the end she come new metals na dem there but no it to be preserved and she na eno na a recording noise near the bia whatever information that happen on the plane no black box no na a record there it okoba say helicopter na crash na chinye ba ho bebrebe no na ho be yan say na e be fly e dey akọ back to China e ho na mo ye plane no next omo no akọ ready akọ pick information from that black box no that better Ghana for you am ehu ade ba ade na e call say the crashing of the helicopter na enra no anam nya ntie say black box report na ababedru Ghana hanom na enei o be present am his excellency the president John Dramani Mahama any committee a o te say omunya hwehwemu efa helicopter na e crash ye no it enei no ana the committee no eje report na ana omu eka di ewom a kese e call say the crashing of the helicopter no only to Ghana for them. Next way any semwa omo ekan
to avoid low clouds. Now let me explain why this was so. The flight started out being conducted under visual flight rules. Now, if you're flying under visual flight rules, what it means is you're using visual references to navigate. It's a normal way of flying. So they were using visual cues to navigate to go to Obuasi. And so they had to stay away from cloud in contact with the ground. So as the cloud base changed, they changed their altitude. Where they needed to avoid, they would avoid. I'd like you to take a look at these 2 pictures. Now, first of all, these pictures were taken in the environs of where the accident took place. Take note, it wasn't taken on the day of the accident, but it's just representative. The picture on the left shows the morning weather and shows you the visibility, gives you some idea of the visibility on the day. The picture on the right is taken from the same place, looking at the same area, and you can clearly see that you can make out the ridges in the terrain over there And it's noteworthy that on the day of the flight, this visibility you are seeing that I'm telling you, you can't even see that as you can see. On the day, the visibility was much worse. From eyewitness accounts, the visibility was down to close to 200 meters at some point. This also shows a picture of actual weather from a passenger who was on board the aircraft, just to give you an idea. The weather in the southern Ghana was poor on the day, which delayed departure for about an hour. In Accra, conditions were misty, with visibility of about 5 to 7 kilometers and very low clouds starting above the ground. While the situation improved slightly later in the morning, the early hours were dominated by haze and overcast skies. In Kumasi, the weather was worse, with drizzle reducing visibility to around 4 kilometers and heavy low clouds sitting just 600 to 900 feet above the ground. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome were available. Only Accra and Kumasi Aerodrome weather were available. There was no formal information on the weather available to the pilots along the flight route. Witnesses reported poor visibility due to fog and rain at Brofuyedru and its environs. Environmental commissions in the Dampier Forest Reserve and its rugged terrain of hills, mountains, created conditions such that over such rugged terrain, you can have turbulence, downdraft, and other phenomena. Now, to look at this is what we're talking about. This is a known aviation phenomena when you have such rugged territory. And what ends up happening is turbulent wind currents occur usually around ridgelines, mountains, and hills, and can generate sink rates in excess of 1,000 feet a minute in moderate wind conditions. These sink conditions can often exist well above the barrier that induces the eddies. We assessed the aircraft to see if it was fit for purpose. The helicopter entered the Ghana Air Force Service in May 2015, having been manufactured in 2012, and it reached its 10-year service threshold on 18th May 2025. Aircrafts have periodic checks to make sure that they're fit for service. The Air Force has 25-hour checks, 50-hour checks, and 100-hour checks. The 10-year check for the helicopter is what was mandated for this helicopter. Now, as is usual, an operator, in this case Ghana Air Force, requested from the manufacturer an extension. And it's normal, happens in civil flying, happens with any type of flying. The manufacturer gave a 90-day extension to 18th August 2025. And basically, the helicopter met all the basic safety requirements. That notwithstanding, it's sort of clashed, it sort of met a 100-hour check. So the Air Force also did a 100-hour check on the helicopter before the flight. The aircraft on the day, the aircraft on the day was declared serviceable and duly signed off by both the engineers and the captain. The flight data report indicates that the helicopter was in good working condition. The helicopter, however, did not have some avionic safety enhancements. As I said before, the aircraft there is a definite need to modernize the fleet of the Ghana Air Force. We have recommended that the Air Force acquire modern aircraft with terrain avoidance warning systems and modern navigation systems. That the aircraft should have cockpit voice recorders and flight data recorders, which are the audiovisual capable types. That the Air Force should invest in simulators for recurrent training. That they contract certified aviation weather provider or providers, and that Ghana as a nation should try to have en route navigational aids, especially in remote areas. The Air Force should seriously consider establishing flight data monitoring and en route tracking systems. And finally, we believe that they need to acquire ground support equipment, modernize what they have. In conclusion, the helicopter accident was an unfortunate and sudden weather-related accident. Implementing the safety recommendations will prevent the reoccurrence of future accidents. At this time, before I take any questions, I just want to give a few acknowledgements. I'd like to acknowledge the efforts and the support that the team had from the National Security Secretariat, led by the National Security Coordinator. Yes, we listened to the CVR. We listened to it several times. And it is part of what informed us of what caused the accident. And for modernization of the fleet, we think it should be done immediately. Tomorrow is not fast enough. As soon as the country can afford and do it, we should do it, because it would help the Air Force with this core mandate, part of which is to fly dignitaries all over the country. And I think we owe it to ourselves as a nation to make sure that we have aircraft fit for purpose, aircraft that are of the highest technology, to make sure that everything is very, very safe. Yeah. To the sudden loss of altitude, I'm sure it was in one of the slides. When you're over rugged territory, that's over terrain, dependent on the steepness and so on and so forth, it's very easy to have turbulence. It's caused by eddies and rotors. It's an aviation phenomena, right? And you have updrafts, you have downdrafts. And even interestingly, even above the ridge, you can still have downdrafts coming. And it's a phenomenon, it's an aviation phenomena that unfortunately they fell into. They were very unfortunate, but it's a phenomenon that they fell into. And because there cannot be any other reason for that sudden loss of altitude for a plane climbing with power, with a pitch attitude, right? Because you see, the flight data recorder, to just help you understand the whole thing, the flight data recorder records the last 10 hours of a flight. The cockpit voice recorder records the last 2 hours of a flight. The flight data recorder, this particular one of this helicopter, records 93 parameters every second. The 93 parameters is made up of 48 analog parameters and 45 switch positions. So, looking at the flight data report, you know where all the switch positions are, you know what the height of the plane was, you know the exact position you know it time bound. So, what we are saying is from informed data. It's not that we've just conjectured something. We have the data, we've looked at it, and That is how come we've come with the conclusions we've come up with. I hope I've answered. Then the last one, the postponement of the maintenance. It's industrial practice. It's operational. In the airlines, it's done. Air Force doing it, there's nothing wrong with it. It's accepted practice. So there's nothing to it. I hope I've answered your question. Thank you. The decision to continue or to do an intermediate landing is the discretion of the captain. The captain was confident that he didn't need to do it. That is why he didn't do it. In terms of the additional avionics, right? I believe the question was, if they had it, would it have prevented the accident? Was that the question? Okay. All I would say is it could have prevented the accident because it would have put the pilots in a better situational awareness mode. And it would have put them in a much better place to have taken decisions which could possibly have avoided this. But let's not kid ourselves. Let me just say something. What they went through is the sort of thing that even the best anywhere would have struggled to get out of, using what they were, with the limited instrumentation and so on that they had. The instrumentation, the instrumentation was fit for everything, but what we are saying is, I guess it's like saying that more meat never spoils the soup. It's, if you have all these other enhancements, it really helps. The Air Force the Air Force would be happy to have these enhancements because they know what it would help them do. And it would make our dignitaries and so on much safer when they fly. So that is why we are recommending that. But it doesn't mean that the fact that those enhancements were not there, that is why the accident happened. No, it would be wrong to say so. That would be too far-fetched. In terms of the explosion, there was no explosion before. You know, the Z9 helicopter, its fuel tank actually is under the, where the passengers sit, right? So when it impacted, and don't forget, it was doing a flight to Obuasi and back. It wasn't going to refuel in Obuasi. So it had fueled up well. So on impact, that is when the explosion took place. We looked at all that. We looked at the corroboration. The time when, because you see, when there was the impact, when the explosion took place, don't forget, there were eyewitness accounts. So the eyewitness accounts tally with what we're saying. In terms of the helicopter going off radar, our radar systems in the country are just Accra, Kumasi. The routes they were flying, together with the height at which they were flying, it was very easy for them to go off radar. It's normal. Flight monitoring, which is what we're talking about, is different from being on a radar, right? Flight monitoring is knowing where your aircraft is at any time. It doesn't have to be on a radar screen. It can be through messages. That's why we said things like secondary surveillance, radar broadcasts, and so on and so forth, right? But it's a tracking system, okay, and it should be done for all Air Force aircraft. In fact, in the civil world, airlines, by law, have to track the aircraft. So what we're asking for is, we're not asking for the moon. It's something that must be done. I hope I've answered your questions. Thank you.
Now, according to them, the Omuchirimu said, the plane no crash weather, or I say loss in altitude, and the question say bad weather condition. There's a ball. That town say I guess no. That's in Sunia. They are there to talk a ball near. They didn't know. And the cause say that helicopter no. ɛma just a crash as a fufi anto ata edipa 8 no ɔmo nyina ɛto a na na no sɛ ntimi sɛ na no deɛ Ghana ni ba bia no afi obia tene ho ase and obia ada no ho so deɛ no wadwen kyia bi sɛ nkesi ni obi na kɔ head akɔte ye no obia gasa ada no ho so report na ba ya ni say na emu nsɛm ɛteɛ also that kyerɛ wadwen ama me ɛwɔ comment do you hold it another still obili sɛ there be fragadan bi asa akɔso kyerɛ wadwen ma me ɛwɔ comment section aha yi Penyah Block Media Accra.